Kathleen, why'd we climb a ladder and get on this building?
We're on top of the Henley building, and that's where the cupola was, where the Jolo Guard had their lookout for the Civil War.
The cupola. This is Eleanor Barton, museum curator with the Rosenberg Library. Eleanor, you suggested I contact Kathleen Macca, and I did. And I met her on the roof of the Henley building. Let's take a look. So this is Kathleen Macca. She's the author of the book, Galveston's Broadway Cemeteries. And we're here to talk about the Jolo Guard. What is that?
So the Jolo Guard was comprised of about a dozen men from Galveston, and they were self-designated lookouts during the Civil War, pre-Battle of Galveston days. There's a cupola on top of the Henley building close to where we are right now, and the water came right close to where the building was. The ships came right up there. So this was a perfect spot to see if the Union ships were coming. And they sat up here, took turns sitting in the cupola and watching the water, and they kept a diary in a big logbook that's now at the Rosenberg Library. It's fascinating.
So how did Jolo Guard get started?
Well, Charles Fowler and his friends organized the Jolo Guard, and nobody really knows what Jolo stands for, J-O-L-O. We think that L-O probably stood for lookout, but there are all kinds of theories about what the J-O spelled or stood for, so that's kind of fun.
What's your best guess?
Probably Jolly Order of Lookouts, because most of the men were in fraternal organizations and they all had fancy names, Benevolent Society of, everything. Right. So Jolly Order of would have been right in there with the lingo of the day.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So this Fowler, what was his role?
Well, he was a ship captain and he was active in the military. He was a veteran before the Civil War and then became active again during the Civil War and took part as part of the Jolo Guard. So he and his men were in charge of waiting for the Union ships and acknowledging to everybody else when they came in.
Right, and he's buried in the cemetery.
He is buried in the cemetery, and you can actually see his handwriting and his personal notes in the Jolo Guard log.
Eleanor, can I see this book?
Sure. So this is the Jolo logbook that was kept by the Watchmen who were in the tower during the Civil War. And basically what they did is they worked in 24-hour shifts, a group of guys, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day. The first entry here in the book is from April 22nd, 1861. So the war had begun, but there really wasn't any action happening yet in Galveston. But these guys were going to be the first to know when something did happen. So parts of the book are sort of mundane. They're just keeping track of the weather, the wind, the currents, any vessels that are coming in and out of the port. But there are some funny things that they recorded in here too. It's quite amusing. In May of 1861, the captain of watch noted that some of the guards were hanging out. He lists their name, 3 of them, but they had a companion, a bottle of whiskey. And he's underlined that here. This is at 9 o'clock. He goes in each hour to check on them, and by 2 o'clock, they are all sleeping. He goes back again at 3 o'clock. They're still sleeping, and by 4 o'clock, he decided he was going to wake them up. So a few days later, this same group of guys is in trouble again for the same thing. Apparently this time, when they were drinking in the tower, they damaged the telescope. They actually broke the telescope, and that's what the watchmen were using to look out into the water. And apparently it wasn't the first time that they had damaged some of the equipment in the tower. So after this, there are no other complaints. There are no troubles with anyone drinking on the job or destroying property. So I guess that was taken care of. But that was one of the issues that the supervisors were facing during this time. Another way that they kept busy were they had lady visitors coming to see them. And in one case, one of the watchmen has a little note in here, and he mentions a lady who baked a pie, and that they have eternal gratitude to her for this woman who brought a pie up for the men to share. So one of the members of the Jolo group was a gentleman named Charles Fowler. You can see from this entry in the logbook from June of 1861, his signature's right here, Captain Charles Fowler.
Yeah, Kathleen actually took me to the cemetery. She showed me Fowler's monument where he was buried. So Fowler's monument, this is pretty fancy.
It is. It's really a nice one. And what's even more impressive is this is one of the ones that would have been raised during the 20s, even though it's large. These monuments come apart in pieces. So this top is a piece, this is a piece, this is a piece. So they would have taken it apart, marked the spot with a code number. They moved it across the street to an empty lot that was owned by the Catholic Church. They raised it, built a brick base, and then came back piece by piece and reassembled it.
Together. Well, that's a lot of history, Kathleen. Thank you.
You're welcome, anytime.
Just like that logbook, the Rosenberg Library does a treasure each month. You can see more of those at galveston.com/Rosenberg Treasures.
Or visit our website at rosenberg-library.org.
And for more stories like this, go to galveston.com/stories. If you're checking into a hotel, be sure and ask if they have galveston.com TV. And we have lots of apps. Just search the App Store for galveston.com TV.